For years, I've told you you need a second passport and that the country that you're born in isn't enough. People now realize you need a backup plan. But what I've been telling you in more recent years is that you actually need a third passport. The world is changing. The country where you're from, your first backup country, but now your second backup country are all important to putting together your secure passport portfolio. Today, I'm going to tell you how to do that. Part of what's inspired me to talk about this is the rise of triple and quadruple citizen babies. We have someone who works on our team who recently gave birth to a child. That child has 3 passports. I have a friend who gave birth to a child last year. Their child has 4 passports by virtue of parents who are citizens of different places. In some cases, those children were born somewhere that gave them an additional citizenship. I think that's something to look at, particularly if you're going to have kids. How do you use things like legal birth tourism to give your kids as many opportunities as possible? But for those of us already born, I'm going to tell you how to put together what I call a portfolio of 3 different passports. You can get more if you want, but I think having just a second passport is no longer enough. I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the author of this now classic book, where almost a decade ago, we told you need a second passport. So here's the situation. As the world becomes more multipolar, as we see increasing threats from the West, and as what I've told you for many years plays out, that Western countries that are frustrated losing the power that they have are getting increasingly nasty, I think you need more diversification. And so no one second passport on its own is going to offer all of that diversification. So the idea is have 3 passports. You're born with 1 in most cases. You can go out and get a second one, let's say citizenship by investment. That's available to everyone. You make an investment in or a donation to another country. They give you a passport in a matter of months. And by the way, the process and the timeline of getting, let's say, a Caribbean citizenship by investment, as I did many years ago in St. Lucia, it's now much more expensive, but it also takes longer. Because not only are more people looking to get their backup plan from all around the world, but also there are new requirements like interviews that have come in. Why? Because Western countries forced the countries that offer citizenship by investment to do that. So you want to have multiple options because you never know what's going to happen next. Let's say that you're a Western citizen. I'm going to give you a case study here. An easy first stop for your second passport is a citizenship by investment program. That could be in the Caribbean. That's a place a lot of people go because Caribbean citizenship by investment has decent visa-free travel. They are members of the Commonwealth. They are countries that essentially they are in the business of citizenship by investment. And so they want customers. And so they want to treat you well. Many of the Caribbean citizenship by investment countries have very favorable tax regimes. Now, you have to move there to take advantage of it. But if they're not going to tax you very much if you do live there full time, they're certainly not going to tax you if you don't live there. And so if you're looking at the United States, where I'm from, they tax people no matter where they live. We do help entrepreneurs in particular, as well as some investors, legally reduce their tax bills, even as an American living overseas, down to the single digits or even 0. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply if you want us to help you reduce your taxes. But you're always going to have an American tax burden. And I've said that Australia, Canada, others could be next to join that. And so a Caribbean citizenship by investment is a good hedge because they don't want to tax you unless you live there. Again, even if you do live there, they're not going to tax you that much. But they're also not going to follow you around the world. Now, I am the goody two-shoes of the offshore world, and so I must tell you, they're going to do a very thorough background check on you. Criminals are not welcome. People with lots of problems are not welcome. So if you're a good person and you're just tired of being bothered by the government, that's a good place to start. Now, these are very small countries. St. Lucia is one of the larger population countries in the Eastern Caribbean, about 200,000 people, a little less. And so these are not countries that are going to throw their weight around diplomatically. I think that some people overblow how much influence other countries are going to have. Certainly, Europe and the United States have pushed these countries to raise their prices and impose more, criteria. And at some point, there may be a divide in the world where any passport that you've known to have purchased will not allow you to go to the United States, for example. The United States might say, hey, St. Lucians aren't welcome. We don't want you because you have a citizenship by investment program. I'd rather be free. I'd rather be lightly taxed. I'd rather know that I'm with a country that is small and isn't going around the world doing nasty stuff. And if I have to suffer the consequence of a couple countries not wanting me to go there, so be it in the future. By the way, that's why you want multiple passports, because you might have some other passport that will let you into the countries that you want to go to. Certainly, I think that Caribbean citizenship by investment is a great first step, particularly for Westerners who just want a backup plan but don't qualify for any other kind of citizenship. You could look at other small countries like Vanuatu. They've got a citizenship by investment program. They lost their visa-free travel to the UK, Ireland, and Europe's borderless Schengen area because they just don't run their program very well. They were letting people in who had shadier backgrounds, whereas the Caribbean does a pretty good job, checking people. And so Vanuatu, paid the price. Now, a Vanuatu passport still allows you to live in tax-free Vanuatu. It still allows you to travel other places. You can still get a visa on it. You can make the decision which one's better. The challenge is if you want to be in the global banking system, a lot of banks are not going to respect a Vanuatu passport. But that's a country that didn't cave. And so you can look at the difference between those two. I think that the Caribbean has done a good job of threading the needle between, taking care of the bigger countries that want to put pressure on them, that don't want you to have a freedom passport. But you can take your choice between those two. What a lot of people are looking at is they look at the Caribbean citizenship by investment and they tack on something that's bigger, that has the diplomatic heft. So Turkey, with its real estate investment, $400,000, you buy a property, you can sell that property after 3 years. I own property in Istanbul. It's gone up in value. And so potentially you could make money getting that passport. And yet Turkey is a much bigger country, of course. 80-some million people live there. It is a country that has visa-free travel not to the West because it has not gotten along as well with the European Union. It hasn't met all the conditions they want. You can't go as a Turk to the United States without getting a visa at an embassy. But you can go pretty much everywhere else. All of Central America, South America, a lot of Africa, pretty much all of Asia. It is a place that, because they have so many people, most countries in the world want their citizens to go there and spend their tourism dollars, and you'll be taken seriously. And they have embassies all around the world. And so if you put those two together, that's a combination that you don't need to have any ancestry. You don't need to even really leave your house very much. You probably should go to Turkey to complete your real estate transaction. You don't need to leave your house generally to go to the Caribbean. You can do the interview remotely. But basically, with barely leaving the couch, you can get two passports that are highly complementary, give you visa-free travel to pretty much the entire world. You have some heft, and you have, the countries are just like, hey, we're just going to totally leave you alone. Turkey's not going to tax you just because you have a citizenship, as long as you don't live there. Turkey is not going to draft CBI passport holders into the military generally. Now, you need to look at your kids and paying a fee to get them out if you're going to add them. But Turkey is going to tax you if you do live there, if you move there full time. Let's go through another case study now. Let's say you're American or Canadian or Australian. You're not a citizen of an EU member state, but you are a Westerner. You're used to having a good travel document. You want to be able to go to the European Union, particularly the Schengen area. You'd like to be able to live there, but maybe you don't want to have to. There's a couple different ways you can get access to Europe because, at least in Europe, if you're a citizen of Ireland, you can choose to live in Spain. If you're a citizen of Lithuania, you can choose to live in Italy. And European countries, a number of them, have tax incentives for folks who live there. In cases like Ireland or Cyprus or Malta, they've got non-dom remittance-based tax programs. Other countries like Greece and Italy have lump sum tax programs. Many people don't realize that even though Switzerland and Norway and Iceland aren't in the European Union member state citizens can live there. So up until recently, you could get a Malta citizenship by donating about $1 million in donations and fees to that country. The European Union came in and said, no, you can't do that anymore. What you can do is you can check your ancestry, which they're also tightening up. Do you have ancestry? Parents, grandparents, great-grandparents in many cases. Can you get citizenship by descent? Or can you go and get a Portugal Golden Visa, which they may also tighten up? I'd want to get in that one sooner than later. Can I go and make a large business investment in a country like Austria and be granted citizenship that way? So a lot of people are looking at citizenship in Europe as other Westerners, and that's great. And the benefit there is you have some of the diplomatic heft. I mean, even if your country is tiny, you can use other EU embassies when your country doesn't have one. So you have representation all around the world. For as difficult as Europe has become in some things, they do take a little bit better care of their citizens overseas than a country like the United States does. And so The other benefit being you have flexibility to move around. If a black swan event happens, if even a geopolitical event happens, the EU isn't entirely in lockstep. If any kind of thing happens, you can always move between any of the countries, and that offers you a benefit. If you're an American, you can move to 0 other countries without getting a residence permit or a citizenship there. If you are Maltese or Irish or Portuguese, you've got a lot of other places that you can move. But here's the thing. You've added some benefits, but you haven't really added a lot of diversification. As the world becomes more and more multipolar, what have I said? I think, and I think what's happening under the Trump administration is starting to really prove the point that I've been saying for a few years. You're going to have a lot of countries, particularly those that are up and coming, not wanting to do business with the U.S., perhaps not wanting to do business with the West. Now, it's interesting to see how the EU is kind of pivoting towards China in response to some of the Trump tariff talk. But if I'm running a business, or heck, even if I have a high-paying job, it all trickles down. But if I'm in business, I don't want to be entirely Western. I don't want to have entirely that identity. So sure, if I'm American, having a Portuguese citizenship through the Golden Visa program or getting my citizenship by descent or doing any other kind of citizenship, we have numerous different ways you can become a European Union member citizen. Again, nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We have, I think, more options than pretty much anybody out there for residences and citizenships and different ways to get them. But that's still not giving you the full diversification, right? You're seeing a big push of Americans who live in the UK being naturalized. Great. Get your second passport. I've met too many people over the years who've been living in a country for 10, 15, 20 years. Did you get your passport? I'm not in a rush. Be in a rush before it's too late. If you qualify by descent, if you're living in a country and you qualify to naturalize, any way you qualify to get a passport, maybe through marriage. Maybe you're married to an Italian, for example, or a French citizen, for example. You could register your marriage and potentially not even have to move there. And after X number of years, you could be able to get a citizenship. Take advantage of that because they change the rules sometimes. Here's the big point I want you to consider as the world is becoming more multipolar, as we've been talking about. Countries are setting up their own kind of tighter gangs. It's easy to go back and think, hey, after World War II, the U.S. ran the show, the U.S. dollar took over. There was basically this, it was the U.S. and the Soviet Union, and then the Soviet Union fell apart. Okay, now China's ascending. People seem to write that off like that's going to go away. There's all these different pockets. Look at what's happening even under Trump. The U.S., puts tariffs on China. China says, great, we'll buy our soybeans from Brazil. It's driven a resurgence in Brazilian stocks. Brazil is part of BRICS. Brazil is increasing trade within its own region in South America, the Mercosur region. You're seeing more and more countries, make these different alliances. And so you want to be able to fit in as many of those alliances as possible. Because I continue to believe the United States is not going to totally fall off a cliff, but it is going to be more and more irrelevant. Other Western countries are going to be more and more irrelevant. Look at what's happening in China. The latest news that just came out a few days ago. Fewer middle-class Chinese are going overseas to study than any time in recent history because China is increasingly looking inward. And so what's that going to mean? They're going to be doing more trade, making more money with the people that they do it with in terms of BRICS, for example, in terms of their own backyard in Asia. They set up alliances in Southeast Asia. Why don't you want to be welcomed in that alliance? If you've got a business and you are a Westerner, you may not be as welcome. They may do the same thing to you that the United States did to everybody else. Hey, we have embargoes. We don't do business with American companies or companies owned by Americans. I'm already starting to see this, like in the banking world, for example. And so the global South is something that I think should be part of your passport portfolio. A Caribbean citizenship by investment, again, there is similar influence from the U.S. and the EU. If you're okay with that, that's great. If you just think, hey, I totally don't trust the U.S. and the EU, I'm not saying don't get a Caribbean passport, but I'm saying get something else in addition. One of the other things that's important is there's going to be certain banks, for example, that if you go and say, hey, I'm a citizen of St. Lucia or Antigua and Barbuda, they're like, we don't really want that. Now, if a bank says declare all your passports, I'm going to declare all my passports. So if they don't want me, they don't want me. That's one thing that we do here in our team. We have a thorough bank R&D process. We got one guy. All he does is look at taxes and call banks all day and build relationships with banks. And it changes over time. And there's different banks for different people. But if you are only a citizen of Vanuatu or St. Lucia or what have you, you're not going to have any other options. There may be banks where they say, listen, we just need your main passport. What's the passport that you live here, you're visiting here on, or what have you? And okay, hey, I am St. Lucian, but I'm also this. Okay, great. Well, show us that one and we'll be happy to onboard you. I mean, you want to be able to have different identities, not to be able to hide anything. Again, if someone asks you a question, I'm always telling people, but again, plenty of places where getting a residence permit, opening a bank account, we only want to see your one passport. We understand you may have others. That's great. We're going to treat you as this identity. And so for being safe, remember all the hijackings and of Americans back in the the last century in the like 70s. For keeping your business safe, for keeping your money safe, for keeping your options open, for being able to travel to more places. I think you'll see more of these different gangs and alliances around the world tightening up within and kind of pushing out the West. I've been telling you this for years, and look what happened when Trump went around and said, we're going to impose tariffs. Whether you like tariffs or not, whether you like Trump or not, you want to keep your options open. And so why would you want to be identified as an American in places where being an American is not a good idea? Or fill in the blank of other nationality. I've heard people in Asia, we don't want to work with the British anymore. Okay, let's have some other nationality we can present ourselves as. And so the benefit, besides just having 3 passports as a plan B, is other passports you can obtain in the global south, such as Turkey, such as Egypt, such as Jordan. Those are all citizenship by investment programs. They will offer you opportunities to invest and get your money back, but it also could lead in the future to more opportunities to say, hey, we're going to close off certain nationalities investing here, so you're going to have more opportunities to invest in those places than someone else would. One thing that we're doing a push in our R&D team, we've been flying one of my colleagues to a couple of African countries, and they're meeting with folks in the government. They're meeting with other folks in the industry, and they're looking at opportunities that may already be in the books that nobody knows about for African passports. Egypt, of course, is a citizenship by investment program. That's in Africa. But I've been telling you, if I'm looking 20 years in advance, having an African passport for diversification, being able to invest there perhaps on more preferential terms, I think there's a lot of opportunities there. That's not a bad thing to have. And I'll tell you what, I've traveled on an African passport years ago to a number of places, including Singapore. All they do is, in most places, okay, 30 days, great. Have a nice stay. Thank you very much. The same way they would when I was an American. And so let's go through some of the Global South options. Citizenship by investment, I mentioned Turkey, I mentioned Egypt, I mentioned Jordan. Cambodia has sort of a de facto citizenship by investment program. That's not only Global South, that's part of ASEAN, this 10-country alliance in Southeast Asia. Now, that's not as developed as the European Union or even perhaps as Mercosur in South America. But being able to have a Southeast Asian passport, one of the fastest growing regions in the world, again, increasingly, working with places like China, and I think we'll, get some business for the Global South. Now, most people aren't going to have $30, $40, $50 million to invest. Potentially, if you have a lot of money to invest, there have been people who have been granted citizenship in countries like the UAE. Kevin O'Leary talked about it. There's others who have been given it. You can naturalize. And so Latin America is the place that you can naturalize. You are seeing Latin America increasingly kind of push away from the United States and join more with the Global South. So most countries in Latin America, you can naturalize there. There are what we call paper residences, where you get a residence permit, you wait X number of years, maybe you have to learn the language, but you don't really need to spend a lot of time there. Those are shrinking in number. We talked about them with our clients. We talked about them in our live event, Nomad Capitalist Live. Other residence permits like Mexico, you can get it, keep it in your back pocket for 3 years. You don't really have to be there very often. And then if you want the citizenship later, you can go and spend the time after that. But the clock is already ticking. There's countries like Argentina, you can get citizenship in as little as 2 years. You have to spend time there. There's countries like Chile, you can go and live there and you get a tax holiday for the first couple of years. Costa Rica, relatively tax friendly. Panama, certainly more U.S. friendly. And you went and you saw, obviously, Trump was talking to them about the Panama Canal. But Panama seems to be, I'm told, is pushing through the backlog of citizenship applications. And so if you go and live in tax-friendly Panama, you can get a citizenship. That's not as Global South as the rest. Honduras in Central America, ending their extradition agreement with the United States. I'm not mentioning that because you should go there and hide out due to nefarious activities, but it shows that Honduras says we're no longer going to be a puppet. And that's one of the ways that they're saying it. So I like it for that reason. You're not going to find me hanging out in Honduras. But you're seeing more of these countries kind of pushing back on the West. Why? Because there's other alliances for them to go to, and also because their countries have more strength. No doubt Honduras is not nearly as wealthy of a country as the United States. You look at the latest safety numbers, it's not that much less safe than the United States. And Honduras has been pretty unsafe historically for violent crime. So you're seeing these countries that maybe you haven't realized have gotten better over the years. That's one reason we have Nomad Capitalist live in Malaysia. I want people to come and see just how great Malaysia is, because people come and they're like, I never would have imagined. And when you do that, you start to open up your mind to realize, yeah, I should probably have a passport from the global south. Africa may not make it into your top 3. Maybe that's your 4th passport. But with all these different opportunities, why would you limit yourself to just 2 passports, especially if it is, I'm going to be American and Portuguese? It's a good start. It's better than nothing. No doubt about it. You've just basically 30x'd the number of countries that you can live in for any number of different reasons, from tax to freedom to opportunities for your kids, what have you. But you're still in the same basket. And if you want to prosper in the next 25 years, I think the global south is going to be the place to be. I also think that freedom places are going to be the place to be, which is why I still am bullish on Caribbean citizenship by investment, even though the price doubled. So the bottom line is you've got a lot of options. How do you make sense of the options? Well, this is what we do for the people that we help. You go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We do have a $1 million liquid net worth requirement. Our best clients typically have between $5 and $100 million. Why? Because generally the people that we're helping, to get them all the things that they need, not just passports, but maybe a residence permit in the UAE or somewhere else, maybe an asset protection plan, maybe some banking around the world. Maybe they want to move their company because they're going to move overseas. They want to reduce their taxes. The best clients with the best experience here are spending between $100,000 and $300,000 in fees for the services being provided, on top of making donations or moving money into various investments, banks, what have you. And so this is not something for someone who just wants a residence permit. But if you believe what I believe, that the world is evolving and becoming more multipolar, and just going out and getting one residence permit or 1 second passport you saw advertised in a magazine, if you realize that's not going to solve your problem and give you true freedom, but you need a holistic plan, you go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. I put my money where my mouth is. I'm currently working on 3 more passports. I have residence permits around the world. Some of them may turn into citizenships in the future. I want to be as protected as possible. You don't have to go as far as I have. At a certain point, it becomes a bit of a hobby. But certainly, you don't want to just, tick a box and say, yeah, we got our golden visa. We're covered. We're so smart. You're better off than most, but you're still not well enough off. We'd love to help you figure out your plan at nomadcapitalist.com/apply. Whether you do that or not, I think the new standard is a 3rd passport.